Across the country, we're being driven mad by unwanted charity calls.
I'd have one every other day, phone me up.
I was hiding the telephone, so I couldn't hear it.
Tonight, Dispatches goes undercover in 2 call centres, which are raising money on behalf of Britain's biggest charities.
Guys, talk to me. What's going on?
We reveal how some fundraisers are being put under pressure to meet daily targets.
What happened? Want some explanations?
We discover what some consider to be acceptable behaviour when asking us to donate.
If you want to make something up about yourself, I've got 2 kids and it works fantastic.
And we show you how to stop those pesky nuisance calls once and for all.
I think a lot of the time people don't really realise what it is that they're opting into when they give out their information, and this is a huge concern.
They were once the scourge of our high streets. Now, chuggers, or charity muggers, are back. Except this time, it's harder to escape, because they've got your phone number.
Hello? Sorry, I'm going to have to stop you there. I've got a call. Hello? Yes, that's me.
Telephone fundraising has helped some of Britain's biggest charities generate huge sums of money, with an estimated £2 billion raised for good causes. The downside? An awful lot of calls are being made. Last year, there were over 14 million.
All the 8.
And as I discovered at a bingo night in Birmingham,
5 and 7, 57.
some of us are now fed up with repeated requests for donations.
How often do you get them?
Between 6 and 7 times a week. I'd have one every other day, phone me up. So the word must have got out straight away. You know, this guy's going to give money to us. He must be a bit of a mug.
I just turn around and say, well, I ain't got it, and that's it. Try again. And they keep trying and trying, and you just cannot get rid of them.
60, line 60.
Adrian and Robin aren't alone. A charity regulator, the Fundraising Standards Board, says complaints about charity calls jumped 26% last year. And it seems repeated requests for money are making some people's lives a misery. For the past 15 years, 82-year-old Barbara Dunn has donated about a quarter of her state pension to as many as 25 different charities.
So, Barbara, tell me about all the charities you've given to.
Well, there's Mother Teresa, Ethiopia, Four Paws Animal Sanctuary, Christian Aid, RSPCA.
But her decision to send an occasional cheque wasn't enough for some telephone fundraisers.
They said, well, it's about your donations. We do appreciate them, but could you increase them and could you do it by direct debit? And up till now, I've said no.
But charities kept on calling and calling until at one stage she was receiving half a dozen calls every day.
But when it got to its worst then, you were getting 5 or 6 calls a day. How did you deal with that?
I was hiding the telephone, so I couldn't hear it. That's how bad it got.
Where'd you hide the phone?
In the airing cupboard.
Really?
Yeah, no, it sounds crazy.
Well, it sounds crazy, but you were obviously driven to it.
You know, so I could get a couple of hours sleep without being disturbed and ask for money. Plus, I did feel I was being harassed.
Mm.
And plus, there's the feeling of guilt because you turn them down.
You might think most charity calls are made by the charities themselves, but you'd be wrong. As they don't have call centres, some of the biggest charities are paying companies to raise money for specific campaigns on their behalf. Many of these professional companies have signed up to a fundraising promise, which says that they won't be an unreasonable nuisance and that they will be honest, open and transparent when asking for money. Which begs the question, why are there so many complaints? Dispatches decided to go undercover at 2 leading fundraising companies to find out if these promises are being met. Privately owned NTT Fundraising employs around 100 telephone fundraisers and boasts a range of blue-chip charity clients, like Great Ormond Street Hospital Children's Charity.
What makes Great Ormond Street Hospital special?
The charity uses different methods of fundraising, like this effective advert, asking people to set up regular donations.
How are you? Good.
Ready to raise funds for such a great cause, our reporter started work at NTT, who are paid to sign up donors. They say their fundraisers have sincere and honest call handling skills. Not something a fellow trainee could say about his previous work at another fundraising call centre.
I mean, I've definitely lied on the phone, like a white lie in terms of I said something about my girlfriend having an asthma attack. I've got an ex who did, but I'm still my girlfriend. Do you know what I mean? Yeah. I think you know, that's allowed, isn't it?
Our reporter checks with his trainer if it's okay to lie to potential donors at NTT fundraising.
Lying about personal reminiscences. Absolutely fine.
Oh, is it?
Yeah. If you want to make something up about yourself, I've got 2 kids mental, that's fantastic. What I wouldn't do is make up the fact that they were at Great Ormond Street Hospital or that they have cancer or anything like that.
Okay.
Don't go there because then it may be the person at the other end of the phone will catch you out. When
So he's saying you shouldn't make up facts about your imaginary children having cancer, not because it's wrong, but so that you don't get caught out.
I mean, to be honest, when I was on the phone, what I used to say was, yeah, I've got a 6-year-old and a 9-year-old, what mental 6-year-olds are, what an awkward age. It's a good say again? No, I used to say that, but that's as far as I go. I just keep the conversation light and have a bit of banter about kids. It just helps rapport building, really.
Okay.
You don't have to do that, it's absolutely fine.
This doesn't appear to live up to Great Ormond Street Hospital Charity's promise to its supporters of honesty, openness and integrity. Professor Stephen Lee is a former director of the Institute of Fundraising, the organisation that sets out the rules on how fundraisers should behave.
It's never okay to lie. Honesty is one of the most important elements in all of our fundraising for charity. And if we don't have honesty, frankly, we have very little basis to think that this is appropriate fundraising at all.
In the next 15 minutes, someone in the UK will be told they're going blind.
The Royal National Institute of Blind People raised over £60 million last year with the help of hard-hitting adverts like this one.
Just £2 a month could help a sight loss advisor like me be there for someone facing a life of blindness.
One company that's been part of RNIB's fundraising efforts is London-based Pell & Bales.
Hello, is the training upstairs?
They say they've raised over £1 billion for more than 100 British charities. Their call centre was where we sent our second reporter, who was deployed to an RNIB campaign. During training, recruits were told when speaking to the public they should stick to carefully written scripts, approved by the charities, like this one from Bernardo's.
The script it says I'm calling on behalf of Bernardo's. Sometimes it'll say with or for, but it'll never say I'm calling from Bernardo's. How come it's really crucial that we have that distinction? Yes. Sorry, Archie.
Yeah, because we're not.
Absolutely, yes.
And that will be lying.
It would indeed, yes, thank you. So again, openness to honesty is there. We're calling on behalf of the charity.
Pell & Bales have signed up to a fundraising promise which says we are clear about who we are and what we do. But when our reporter was given this RNIB script, it sounded like she was calling from the charity itself.
I'm calling to thank you on behalf of every blind and partially sighted person you've helped by giving to the RNIB. It's just a quick call, if that's okay.
Worried that it sounds like she's calling from the RNIB, not from Pell & Bales, the reporter raises her concerns with a trainer.
I don't think it's going to make a huge amount of difference in terms of jobs. If you feel more comfortable doing that, then it's okay. No one's going to berate you for changing that around. So, yeah, that's excellent.
Okay, I was just wondering, the more I read it, the more it sounds like I'm calling from the charity instead of on behalf.
Again, saying when you are, we are like the voice of the RNIB, so it's their script they've approved, they know what you're going to be saying. So they're happy for you to say because they're essentially by proxy, they're paying you, so you are part of them in that respect too.
The RNIB script does contain a solicitation statement, as required by the Institute of Fundraising's Code of Practice, declaring the call is being made by Pell & Bales. In this script, the statement is made after the person has agreed to donate and the financial details taken.
And just finally, I just need to let you know that I'm employed by P&B, which is a professional fundraising organisation working for the RNIB. And as members of the Fundraising Standards Board, we're open and we're honest, and that's what we want to be. So I need to let you know that we're hoping to raise £49,600 for this campaign, and the RNIB pay us for each call. So if we speak to everyone, the campaign will cost £21,000.
But would it be better to receive this information before you made the decision to donate? Another trainee fundraiser at Pelham Bales asks about the placing of the solicitation statement in another charity script.
Do people often object at the last stage of the call when you, after they've agreed to give a donation, when you explain that you're calling from P&B? And if they do object, how is the best way to handle that?
No, nobody objects then. But not when you mentioned about P&B. That's just something we have to...
But isn't that too late anyway, because they've already done the...
Yeah. At that point, we used to have to say, I'm paid to make these calls. And everyone thought, oh gosh, no, all the supporters are going to be up in arms and we're paid to make these calls. Most people will say, oh, I think so too. Never be ashamed that you work on behalf of charities, because we raise millions of pounds for the charities, which they would not be able to do if we weren't there to do it for them. And if somebody should ever ask you, say, oh, I thought you'd be volunteering. Well, I've got to feed my children.
Yeah.
And that will stop them straight away.
Well, even if we don't have kids?
Yeah, I always used to say, I've got children. What's the valid reason, isn't it?
But I don't have kids.
Well, think of a valid reason. Yeah.
The Institute of Fundraising's Code of Practice, which most charities and call centres follow, says the solicitation statement must be made during each call. But the former director of the organisation says the government has advised that a declaration should be made before the decision to donate. This would give potential donors a fair indication of the extent to which the charity would benefit from the transaction.
There's absolute guidelines about when the declaration has to be made. The Cabinet Office, I think, very clearly indicated that this declaration must be made before the gift is offered. If that's not happening, that's the fault both of the agency and, frankly, of the organisation and the fundraiser within the organisation who is allowing that to be the case. That is wrong, in my opinion.
Along with questions about how donations are being sought, one of our reporters also discovered a culture which could begin to explain why we receive so many calls. In the last year, Great Ormond Street Hospital Children's Charity raised over £60 million from voluntary donations. And they say on their website that they are very careful not to make people feel pressured, and our fundraisers are not given personal financial targets. However, that's not what our reporter discovers at NTT.
We expected to get approximately 42 sign-ups in a month. For every sign-up that you get above that monthly target, you get a little payment on top. So you'll get paid a little bit of bonus for each one.
And over the next 12 days, the campaign team were hauled into 10 meetings, in 9 of which they were pressured to meet daily targets.
I hope that you guys have not yet fallen into the trap, and certainly if you have, please don't do this, of asking if it's the right time to speak to them. Do not do that. You give somebody an option to opt out of a call, and they'll do it. What happened? I want some explanations, because basically we just seem to be dropping the ball, no results on the board. Also a bit of a lacking of energy, if I'm honest, which is not good enough. I do want you guys to hit the ground and really kick some ass.
Along with the stick, there's the carrot. Incentives are given to those who meet expectations.
Guys, talk to me. What's going on? You guys are like literally somebody sucked the life out of you, like a vampire's gone around and sucked your life force. Is everything okay? I mean, you've got like 2 more sign-ups to get out of the door early.
The Great Ormond Street website says that their fundraisers are not put under any pressure. They don't have financial targets to raise certain amounts. From what you've just seen, would you say that's the case?
These people are clearly being given financial targets. The question, it seems to me, that's really important is, does the charity know that? If it does, the charity would appear to be acting in a manner which is completely contradictory to its own ethical and moral propositions.
The Fundraising Standards Board, who run a self-regulatory scheme for fundraisers, say many complaints they receive are about the tone of charity calls. This shouldn't be a problem for our reporters, as both companies have signed up to an industry promise to respect your decision and not to put undue pressure on us to donate. However, scripts they're given encourage them to ask everyone they speak to 3 times for money. At NTT Fundraising, the reporter questions whether this is always appropriate.
I think I'm doing the right one for this one. She said that she had depression. She was suffering from depression at the moment and wasn't able to really talk.
I mean, well, I classify something like long-term illness. Depression, fair enough, but I don't see how depression could preclude you from having a conversation with someone. Being depressed is not really a get-out-of-jail-free card, if that makes sense.
Okay.
But I mean, I do appreciate your sensitivity. It's very kind of you to be sensitive towards it, but I don't think that, we could just say, no problem, we'll give you a call when you're feeling a bit more up to it.
Sure.
Over at Pelham Bales, the reporter is told not to pressure potential donors, but is also trained to pursue 3 requests for money in each call, a tactic she found difficult to follow with everyone.
On the second call I had, there was a woman and she sounded really old and she pays, I think, £3. The first ask was 8 and she was like, oh my god, I would love to have done to my husband, just went to the home, he has dementia, and like all my money's going in there. He's taken his whole pension and we have literally nothing, and I was like, okay, goodbye.
After 2 days, the reporter still found it hard to keep asking every person they spoke to 3 times for money. Eventually, she's called in to see a manager.
Yeah, I'm really sorry. I am going to have to earlier than we would normally.
The reporter was told she'd accepted too many objections from the public and not pursued enough donation requests.
So what we don't want to try and do is try and push someone to be sort of a round peg in a square hole and make you feel that you're doing things that maybe you're not sure about, and that's the position I'm in, and just listening to the calls. And obviously with R&I we have to take some quite drastic action because it's a long way off target.
So there's no negotiation of like to the end of the week to see how I progress?
I can't. Yeah, I'm really sorry.
Okay.
All right. Yeah. Do you want to sign your timesheet, boy?
Yeah.
In a statement, Pelham Bales told dispatches,
"Scripts are written with our partner charities in line with legal requirements and best practice guidelines. The Charities Act does not specify where in the call the statement should be made. We believe it is most effectively and clearly delivered towards the end of the call, where the supporter still has the option not to make the donation. Supporters are sent written confirmation and are given a period of time before any money is collected. All P&B fundraisers are encouraged to respect every donor and to use their discretion when it is deemed that it may not be in the best interest of the supporter or the charity to continue with the call. In the example, your undercover reporter behaved in the correct manner by ending the call, and this course of action was approved by their coach when they queried it. We receive less than 1 complaint for every 10,000 calls we make, and any complaint we do receive is evaluated to see how it could have been avoided."
The RNIB told dispatches,
"Our fundraising activity fully meets the very high standards we set ourselves to ensure openness, clarity and respect. We are in every way observing legal requirements as well as best practice guidelines set out by the Institute of Fundraising."
Coming up, we reveal why some of us receive so many unwanted calls and how you could go about stopping them.
I think a lot of the time people don't really realise what it is that they're opting into when they give out their information, and this is a huge concern.
Tonight's Dispatches is investigating complaints about private companies paid to raise money for some of Britain's biggest charities. And according to a woman in this Bedfordshire village, there are serious questions about how some of these fundraisers are seeking donations. Emma Frost's late father Joseph suffered from Alzheimer's.
He was extremely confused. You couldn't have a conversation with him, either in person or on the phone, without knowing something was really, really wrong.
Emma grew concerned about her father after he told her about his supposed new job.
He'd said to me at the time, "I'm working for Great Ormond Street," and I was thinking, where's he came that idea from? And then I picked up a letter at his house saying, "Thank you for increasing your direct debit," which prompted me to contact the bank. And they printed off all his direct debits, and I sat and looked at them, and I was just shocked. I can't remember all the charities now, but there were so many.
So what's your suspicion?
He wasn't going out much, apart from to church, so they must have called him, and he was probably quite lonely at the time and glad of a phone call.
What's your impression of how your dad was dealt with?
I think really his vulnerability, which would have been clear because he was so confused, he couldn't string a sentence together, must have been exploited, because nobody could possibly have missed that.
When Emma challenged Great Ormond Street Hospital Children's Charity, they said her father had been called not by NTT Fundraising, but by 2 other call centres.
I said, but, you know, he was so confused you couldn't help but know that. How could this happen? And they said, well, we have to allow confused people to donate because of equal opportunities, which I was really upset about, because as far as I know, the equal opportunities legislation is in place to protect people, and in this case it was being used against him.
Great Ormond Street Hospital Children's Charity told dispatches,
"We are very sorry for the distress caused to Emma Frost and her family. As soon as Ms. Frost brought this to our attention 2 years ago, we cancelled her father's direct debit and ensured he was not contacted again. Ms. Frost has received a full apology. We are reviewing ways in which we can be more robust in managing and monitoring telephone fundraising agencies working on our behalf to ensure they are behaving in a way that meets our high ethical standards."
22. Item 1.
With a rise of 2.8 million charity calls made last year, many of those to pensioners, complaints could continue, especially those concerning repeated calls, many of which are made by private fundraising agencies.
The Queen of Spades.
We sent an undercover reporter to work at one company, NTT Fundraising in Bristol, raising money for Great Ormond Street Hospital Children's Charity. NTT have signed up to a fundraising promise to take care not to cause unreasonable nuisance or disruption. However, some people our reporter was put through to already seem to have been hit with a request.
We've already spoken to one of my colleagues. I'm sorry about that. I didn't realise you'd spoken with someone already. Have you received one from Great Ormond Street recently? When was that, if you don't mind me asking?
So how do they get your number? Dispatches has discovered that some fundraising companies source personal data from online surveys and competitions. And as our reporter at NTT is told, if you aren't careful about what you sign up to, you could end up with an avalanche of phone calls.
It's a bit cheeky, and what happens is it goes into a big pot with charities rather than just one specific charity. So they'll get called for maybe a couple of years from Oxfam or a couple of years from Macmillan, and it just go into another charity pot, another charity pot.
So even if you say no to one charity call, the same company could call you again, representing another charity. Emma Carr from Big Brother Watch says to avoid becoming a target, the old advice is best. Always read the small print.
A lot of the time people don't really realise what it is that they're opting into when they give out their information, and this is a huge concern, especially because when you get to the end of a form there isn't a standardised way in terms of opting in or opting out, and you know they're very long complex sentences and you sometimes have to read, am I opting in? If I tick this box, am I opting out? And that adds to the confusion.
The burning question is, how can you stop unwanted nuisance calls once you're on a list? First, the polite objection. You can try and be nice and object to the call, but sometimes the chugger will put you down as a callback rather than remove you from the database.
A lot of people, all the people have been there for ages, it's really annoying in terms of the nature jobs like that. And then I get halfway through the conversation, they get an objection, so they don't put it through, they just press call back later.
Secondly, the rude objection. You can also try being rude or cutting them off, but that won't work either.
You know what it is? People are annoying. Then what happens? They'll be like, I don't want to do it. Put you back through, it's call back.
Finally, you could just say, don't call me back. The only sure way of stopping some nuisance calls is to tell them explicitly not to call again and to take you off their database. And at NTT, if you don't do this, you may be logged as a soft refusal and put back in the system, ready to be called again, even when our reporter objects.
I asked her if she was a parent herself, and she said that she is, and she understands what it's like to have a sick child. She's a terminally ill daughter.
Right.
Now. I mean, she said she'd rather not talk about it. So if I put her down as a hard refusal, will that be it? She won't get any calls from any others.
Soft.
Soft? Really?
Yeah, because she could be in 6 months' time. You don't want to do it as a hard refusal because she hasn't said she doesn't want calls. If you get my point?
Yeah.
It will be soft refusal because you can't justify getting rid of that record from the data.
You can't justify it?
No, because it's not her herself and she hasn't said, don't call me. she just said she doesn't want to talk about it, which is absolutely fair enough. I get the same thing that Kat said on Monday and things like that. They say, I don't want to talk about it right now, my husband's going for a soft refusal. As much as it feels bad on an FM, it is a soft refusal.
In a statement to dispatches, NTT Fundraising said,
"As a company, we are so proud of what we do, and we're mortified to see apparent weaknesses highlighted in this report. We train and monitor our staff rigorously, which may explain why complaints about our calls are extremely rare. The 1.25 million calls we made last year generated fewer than 100 complaints. However, it is always our goal to represent the highest standards of our sector, and we are constantly striving to improve. We've worked hard to build a reputation for honesty and effectiveness, and of course take seriously any suggestion that we have not lived up to the standards expected by ourselves and our charity partners. We have already started an investigation into the material presented and will ensure we improve any areas found to be lacking."
And Great Ormond Street Hospital Children's Charity said,
"We were shocked and deeply distressed to hear of the evidence of unacceptable behaviour and ways of working presented in this report, and we would like to apologise to anyone affected. We expect the highest standards of honesty and integrity from all our fundraisers. We had an extensive ongoing training programme and system of checks and balances to ensure NTT Fundraising were behaving properly, treating people with the utmost respect, and complying with industry codes of practice at all times. We are incredibly disappointed, and as soon as we became aware of the report, we stopped all fundraising calls with NTT. With NTT's full cooperation, we have launched a thorough investigation and will work with the Institute of Fundraising on best practice fundraising training."
When it comes to giving, Britain is one of the most generous countries in the world. Our charities raise billions of pounds and help thousands of people, and telephone fundraisers are effective at helping them do that. But if charities aren't careful, they could risk losing the goodwill of the very donors who support their great causes.